Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers, and this is Annie 255, and welcome to our snow scene. I want you to get an idea how we're going to grade you on your scenes. Now, I want you to recreate your scenes like what I have here, or you can create your own scene. And the scenes don't have to be complex. In fact, I prefer they are not complex. So if you turn off the wireframe here, you can see that it looks like snow, like a snowy scene. And if you can fill your space up nicely to look like a snowy scene, you can copy what I have here. You can add like little twigs for the arms, or you can get rid of the snowman. You don't want a snowman. You want to do like some sleighs on the ground or something like that. But the idea here is that grading will be if you do the simulation just by itself, like if you create two planes and you have a simulation, you actually create the simulation, that's worth 90%. And if you create and you model a scene for me, you get the extra 10 points. Okay, it's your choice. Of course, I always want you guys to go above and beyond. So going above and beyond, you have that ability, and if you get the simulation, you can get up to 100% obviously. And then if you don't, and you don't create a scene, you just have a flat plane on the bottom, and you have the simulation, and the simulation looks good, you get 90%. And of course, if you don't do anything, then the grades will go lower and lower. But you should be able to go above and beyond. But I always like to give the incentive to people like to go above and beyond, and that put the extra time in. And I want to make sure I reward those students that do that. And I hopefully you take me up on that. Of course, you can get away with just doing the simulation. Now, there are some simulations you can't, and I'll make sure you understand which ones those are. That you'll have to model the props, otherwise you can't simulate the scene the way I want you to simulate it. But for the snowfall and the rain, that's how we're going to actually set it up for when we grade you. Taking that extra work, putting that extra work into the scene will give you that 10 extra points. All right. I hope you have fun with it, and have fun with it. You can model things pretty quickly. It only took like maybe 30 or 40 minutes to do that, if that, and it doesn't take long. Alright, so have fun, and we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing you see here, we've got a lot of nodes that there's nothing in them. That's because when you combine objects or group objects together, you get these nodes, and they're empty nodes. There's nothing in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the whole entire thing. Notice that you can just have a flat plane. You don't have to have anything special. You can, in fact, I'll just delete that one and create a new one. So let's go ahead. And the only reason why I did subdivisions on the snow is because I needed to push and pull points around to make it look like snow. And with the top here, I'm just going to go ahead and scale the plane to fit this the scene itself. There we go, like that. And let's go ahead and pop it up a little bit further so we don't see it in the scene when we get a little closer here, like that. Okay, just as long as you can't see it. Alright, so what we want to do is flip this around. So let's go ahead and flip that around. Just rotate that around so the normals are facing the right direction. Okay. Okay, so there we go. That looks good. Alright, to get started, I'm just going to select everything. What you want to do is, before you do simulation, is make sure everything is delete by type history and freeze transformation. So you can go into edit, delete by type history to get that done, or you can click on this guy right here. Okay, so there's two spots you can do that. This is the center pivot, and then we've got delete by type history here. So if I click on that, notice that all the nodes go away, and it leaves us with just our scene. And then of course, now if I go into freeze transformations, that's what you want to do when you do a simulation. Make sure everything's frozen. So that clears everything out. So now you have a pretty clean scene that you can go ahead and do simulations. That's really important. Alright, so now we're going to go to the preferences, and it's this guy lower right hand side with a guy running away from a gear. So let's go ahead and click on that. Make sure we have our settings set up. So under settings we've got centimeter, and under time slider we want to have play every frame. Okay, you might have to change that, so click on play every frame, and that will help your computer simulate. And how it simulates it, it actually simulates every frame. So we do play every frame, and if you don't have that on and you try to do simulation, it won't work. Okay. So the max playback speed should be 24 frames times 1. Make sure that's set up right, and then we'll go ahead and save it. And since we have everything looks clean now, let's go ahead and, what is that? That should be call that snow. There we go. Alright, so first thing we'll do is we're not going to create an emitter for this one. We're going to create an object, and we're going to emit from that object. So that'll make it a lot easier for us. Alright, so let's click on the object. We want to emit snow, and you notice that if I hold down my space bar, that I have my marking menu that's showing up. And what I want to do is, yours is going to look different. Yours is going to look something like, let's see here, let's show all. Yeah, show all. And so this is what it looks like normally if you hold down the space bar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you go to Hotbox Controls and go to VFX, and then FX only. And then, so when we hold down the space bar, when you see this happening, I'm holding down the space bar. Okay, so we have end particles, fluids, cloth, and all the way down. Okay, these are all FX that you can use and create in Maya. Maya has a very robust solver, and it's one of some of the best, free end hair and end cloth. And fluid dynamics that comes with a package like this. A lot of times you have to buy plugins to even get this much stuff in a 3D package. So they're not as robust as separate packages are. There are packages that do a little better job, but you can get some great results with the stuff that you see here. Okay, of course we're just going to be touching very, very lightly on each area, and of course you guys can take it as far as you want to on your own and have some fun after we get done with this course. But at least you'll get a nice taste of how everything works, and then if you're interested, you can move forward and maybe do some more advanced stuff. Alright, so let's go ahead and select it and hold down the spacebar and go to end particles. Now, we're not using end particles right now. We're going to use the old legacy particles. That's really important. So we want to emit from object. So under legacy particles, emit from object. Okay, so I click on the option box. We're going to emit from a surface, and the particles are 100. And we're going to go ahead and create that. I'm going to go right into my attribute editor. There we go. So this creates a emitter and a particle shape and a geo connector. Okay. So if I open up the snow, you can see that that's where the emitter is. So if you get kind of trying to figure out where everything is, you have to open up. So in the snow we have an emitter. So that's where you can click that. And if you click on emitter, this is where we can go ahead and change the rate, okay, and the speed here, and that's basically all we're going to mess with in here. And then of course your particle shape has a lot more stuff in here, and we can change the lifespan, and we can change, two big ones are the lifespan and the attributes. What is the particle going to look like? Okay, and then are we going to, what kind of color are we going to add to it? Well, it's just going to be white anyway, but we'll show you how to do that and add color to particles. Now we're not going to render this because we just don't have time, and if you want to render one frame, you sure can, but you're going to be ended up having to render through what's called the hardware renderer. Okay, so if I click on the hardware renderer, you can see an Arnold renderer. You can see that we have Maya software and we got Maya hardware. Okay, there isn't a whole lot of support for particles. Maybe in Arnold, I think 2020.4 or 2021 will have particle. You can render with Arnold with particles, so that'll be nice. So right now you can just use Maya hardware if you want. If you want to get an idea what it looks like. Okay. We'll play more with that a little bit later, but right now we're just gonna do play blast animations or simulations. So let's go ahead and play what we have. And so we got that beautiful snowfall, and I can already tell this is going to take the simulation is going to take a long time. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to turn this up to 600 frames. So we're going to have quite a bit of frames here, and it's going to take a while for the frames to simulate everything out. So we're already at 200. Okay, so that might be a little bit too slow. I don't know how you feel about it, but it looks pretty cool, and there's not much we did. Okay, so what can we do to kind of randomize this to make it look like more, snowflakes coming down? First of all, I think we could probably emit it a little faster. So I'm going to go Control A, go back to emitter, and let's make it a heavier scene. So let's do like let's add a 0 behind the 1. Okay, and then where do we have speeds? Right here. So let's do 5. Okay, we're going to emit a little bit faster. Okay. Alright, so that might be a little bit too fast. Okay. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's do something in between, like 2.5. There we go. We're just tweaking this out. Just get a good, nice light snow. Okay, so right, so speed, the random, we don't like anything that's perfect. We don't want it to look CG, so we want to speed random to be set at 1. Okay, let's go ahead and see how that looks and how that change. So it should be coming out randomly now in there. Here we go. Okay, that looks pretty good. I like that. Not too bad. And some of you may think, oh, that's falling too fast. Let's go ahead and if you feel that, I'm okay with you going a little slower. Might just be a little bit too fast. We're just kind of nitpicking now, aren't we? Let's go ahead and use 2, then I'll just stop there so we can move on with the rest of the stuff. So, alright, so now we've got the snow falling. Now we want the snow to kind of accumulate on the objects that we have. It's not necessary. The snow is also going all the way through. Okay, so we want it to stop. Okay. So let's go ahead, and this is a pretty heavy snow, so let's go ahead and turn that down to 500 and just kind of take a look at what that's going to look like real quick. I think that looks a little better. We don't have it overwhelming us with snow, but it's good enough. All right, great. Okay. So far so good. So probably a good idea to save what you have so far. Okay. All right, that looks good. Okay, so now what we're going to do is have the snow stick. Okay. So with this, we're going to go ahead and set the snow up to where it sticks to the objects. Okay. So how does that work? Well, what we're going to have to do is to start with that tree right there. So we're going to click on the particle, and we are going to select the tree, and we're going to go into, hold the space bar, go to end particles, and we're going to go to make collide. Okay. Alright, so let's go ahead and play that simulation, and as the particles hit the tree, they are flowing off. You can see, I don't know if you can see that, they're hitting the tree and they're just kind of sliding off the tree. Now, it's hard to tell, but from a perspective or from the orthographic view, sometimes you can see the particles hitting this tree and then flowing off of it, and you can see it is working. Okay, that's very cool. Alright, so that looks good. So what we want to do though is we want it to start collecting on the tree. How do we do that? So if I stop the simulation, okay, and I select the tree, you'll notice that it's got a geo connector, and there it is. There's a geo connector. So let's talk about what that is and how that affects how the snow will either attach itself to it and stick to it or not. But we're going to keep the tessellation factor, and that has to do with how deep that it when it collides, and you can mess with that later if you need to, but right now we're just doing particles, so we'll just leave it at that. Resilience is how bouncy something is. Okay, well, we don't want snow to be bouncy at all, but we do want snow to have a friction, a very high friction. Okay, in fact. So let's take a look now what that looks like for that tree when the snow hits it. What happens to that snow? It's starting to collect on it. As you can see, those particles are now collecting on the tree, which is pretty cool. Alright. Now sometimes having the friction up to 1 can be kind of a problem and an issue because it starts jittering. Okay, so if you have that issue, you can turn it just down a little bit if you want to friction to 0.5, and that will help get rid of that jittery issues that it might have. The tree kind of, they slide off a little bit, and sometimes they'll get hung up on the very bottom. Okay, and that's normal for most trees. The snow usually slides off a little bit until it gets to the bottom of the branches, then it kind of collects. Okay, so that's the idea with this scene. Okay, we're going to just kind of have some snow sticking. So the friction is not high enough. So let's do, let's go to the highest we can go without starting to get jittery. Let's try 0.8 on that. Okay, that looks pretty good. Alright, that looks really good, so we'll stick with that. So one of the other things we need to do is go ahead and get everything set up for collision on everything else. So what I'm going to do is we got that one done, let's go to the next one. Let's click on the particle and then shift select the object and go into end particles. And this time we're going to go inside, so make collide, go inside the box. And we want to do friction of, I think we ended up with 0.8. and resilience is kept at 0.05. So create that. So once you create it, we can go ahead and just start easily selecting the particles, and then start shift clicking these objects and hitting the G key. And that's a fast way of getting this done. So particle, hold the shift key down and the G key. Now why don't I just select everything and just do the collide? The problem with that is that there's some issues with and Maya gets confused if I select everything. It may not click on something, or it may not input something in here, and I've had that happen before. So I recommend that you do them separately, so everything will work properly. So let's go ahead and get that done too. So I'm going to go back in here, make collide, and I'm going to do the same thing with the ground. Okay. Just hit G on that one. So everything should collide and then stick. All right. So because the snow is white, you're not going to see much difference there, and the trees are what you're going to see the most on. And you can see that they're kind of sliding down. Okay. You can see that snow is just kind of rolling around. Look at that. That's wild. And it's colliding and bouncing up a little bit. Okay. Alright. So we've got that bouncing around. Look at it. It's hitting and it's bouncing around. It's not really sticking. So what we need to do is let's turn resilience down, okay, on some of these objects here. Let's go ahead and go into the geoconnector here. And so the friction's up pretty high, but the resilience we still have a 0.05. So let's just type in 0 here. We don't want any bounce at all. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the objects and just get rid of that. Just place 0. And I'll do this really, really quick here. Get all these at 0. And once we do that, then we'll have the trees sticking, the snow sticking to the trees. And click on the snowman. We'll do the same thing with this guy. And so there's no bounciness now. Now the thing is, we do need to select the particles and add a gravity. Okay, so let's add a gravity. And with the gravity, we don't need to pull it down much. Otherwise, we're going to speed that. We're going to speed it up a little bit, but we do want gravity to be pulling a little bit on there. So let's do 1 on that gravity. Direction is down, and that'll help push things down. Now with the trees, I'm going to go ahead and add more friction. So I'm going to go 1 on that. I don't mind if the snow slides off the snowman. So I'm going to do 1 on the trees for friction. That way they stay put. And 1 on the friction here, like that. Okay, so resilience no at 0 and no bounciness. And on the floor plane, we want this to be 1 as well. Let's go ahead and type in 1. There we go. Alright, so that looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and start the simulation again and see what we got. Alright, that looks pretty good. Gravity's pulling it down. It still looks nice, and the gravity will keep these points down on the ground. Okay, so that will work just nicely. I like that.